We're live.
All right. Happy Friday, all. Happy Friday. It's Friday, November the 9th. This is Roz McCarthy here with CannaTalk with Roz live. Hello, guys. If I see we have attendees coming into the Zoom. I'm so happy to be here today. It's Friday, November 9th, and we're here with CannaTalk with Roz. And we got Eric Ranger, our co-host, on. Tell the folks hi, Eric.
Hi, everybody. How you guys doing? Hope you had a powerful week and getting some rest and relaxation this weekend and get ready for another powerful week next week.
Absolutely. So we are going to wait a few minutes. We got some folks coming on board here. I'm excited about our talk today, and it's it's something that's important. It's something that a lot of folks don't understand, and some folks do, but some don't understand the gravity in this industry and how important it is. And basically, our topic today is about social justice versus social equity. What does that mean? How do you define it? Is it important? Is it important to the industry? And I'm happy to introduce our guest. We have a guest today, and this man is he's awesome. He is the forerunner has been fighting the good fight out in California as the president, co-founder of California Minority Alliance, as well as the CEO of California Cannabis. He has his own dispensary. He'll go over in detail, but I want to make sure, let us welcome Virgil Grant. Virgil, welcome, my brother. Tell us a little bit about yourself and just, share with the public about who you are and what you've done in this fight about social justice versus social equity in cannabis.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure. And I appreciate everything that you guys are doing in different regions of the country, first of all, and just am so happy that this conversation has now turned into action, and that action is now turned into legislation. And that's kind of the whole concept of social equity and the purpose for it. We wanted to make sure that that was something that we definitely started this movement in. So I'll just give you a little history of myself. I've been in the industry since the very beginning. I had one of the first shops in the history of medical marijuana in, I guess you would say, the country, California being the first 22-year-old state. I've helped craft policy for the city of Los Angeles and in the state of New Jersey. The social equity component that has now been implemented in New Jersey was a spinoff of LA's model. I also crafted Measure M, which is now the licensing mechanism that is going on for LA, and pushed hard now that Governor Brown has signed in the social equity statewide for California. Been owned 3 micro businesses in the city of Los Angeles. Been in the industry, like I said, from day one, and am continuing to champion the cause for social equity, not only in California, but throughout the country.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Hey, Virgil, when I first met you, Roz, I don't know if you had a question that you were going to go into. I just wanted to...
No. Go ahead.
And this goes into, I think, some of his background as well. You know, when we first met in Atlanta, was that 2017, I believe?
Yes.
And I can remember watching you on the panel and watching you talk about your involvement and what you did out in California. And I remember sitting back and just in awe at the passion, the level of passion that you had to, for this particular subject matter, for the work that you were doing. And I'm curious, where did that passion come from? Where did your passion to be, to making sure that this industry gets off on the right leg, where does that all stem from for you?
It comes from an unselfish part of me that even though I was in the industry and I'm doing okay for myself in the industry, I'm always looking to help my people. I've always wanted to be an activist of some form, didn't know which form it was going to come in. But now we see it's been revealed in the cannabis industry. But the fight that I've had has never been just solely for myself, but for, people like myself, communities that I've come from that have been negatively impacted by the failed war on drugs, people who have received felonies unjustly within our society. And now that this industry has taken off onto a whole nother level, we were not going to be able to participate because of that. And so I wanted to make sure that someone like myself, who is an industry leader, who feels responsible to represent people of color in the cannabis industry, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't left out and forgotten.
Absolutely.
No, and that's awesome. I think where I want to start, because I'm going to just throw out questions, and I want Virgil and Eric, you guys just being able to share from your perspective. I have a slide up. It says social equity in cannabis. What is equity? Equity is the accommodation of differences through fairness and process and result to prevent the continuation of an inequitable status quo. It reduces barriers to entry in the commercial marijuana industry. It provides technical and professional services, including mentoring for businesses and individuals facing systemic barriers. And it promotes sustainable and economically focused practices in the commercial marijuana industry. So question number one, is social equity important? And what does it mean? Why is it something that needs to be done, not just California from a local perspective, but statewide? And does social equity always mean, dealing with African Americans or people of color?
You want to take that, Eric, or you want me to start?
I'll let you. I mean, you're the guest. I talk a lot, so you go ahead and go first. I'll follow up with it.
Okay. Yes. First of all, I want to state this because I want to be very clear about social equity. And this is directed to our people. Social equity is not a welfare program. So let's be clear about that. And I want everybody to clearly understand that. Social equity is an opportunity for a group of people who would not have had the opportunity to participate in an industry that they essentially created and help usher or be ushered in the direction that is going in present day. So I just want to be clear about that. Also, the reason why I even begin to speak on social equity is because, once again, when you go back to people who have received felonies unjustly within the communities of color, because we understand that 4-to-1 number for people of color being arrested, and mainly blacks being arrested to one white for committing the same crime. We know that there's a disparity there. And so social equity is a stab at changing that inequity when it comes to arrest rates, felonies, and things of that nature moving forward. So social equity is very important. And you also asked the question, why is it important across the country? Well, the failed war on drugs just wasn't in California or in Florida. Right. Or in this state, it was when Reagan and all of the other presidents that Clinton and Nixon declared this war on drugs and tough on crime, tough on drugs. It was across the country, and it negatively impacted mostly communities of color. Now, also addressing the question, is social equity only towards Black people, Latinos, or people of color? Well, no, because in Humboldt County, where that is a community of 99.9% white people, they were heavily impacted by the failed war on drugs. So anybody in Humboldt or Mendocino that was negatively impacted by the failed war on drugs also qualifies for social equity. So social equity was only directed to those communities negatively impacted by the failed war on drugs, regardless of the color of your skin.
So if we take a look at that, I mean, and we look at the country as a whole, the way we look at it, I mean, you talk about states like Illinois, you know, like Florida. I mean, there might be pockets in Florida that might not have been affected by the war on drugs, but you know, the Miami, the Dade County area, you talk about Georgia and the Atlanta area. I mean, it was prolific everywhere. So how do we, you know, right now we're getting ready to go into 2019. We have all these new elected officials. We need to look at the advocacy standpoint of champion folks to be able to start having conversations with their legislators on what does this look like from a state perspective, don't you think, versus just at a city or municipality perspective?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that this is a national conversation.
Okay.
I really believe it's a worldly conversation, but we have to tackle one animal at a time.
Absolutely.
And so I believe that this is to be started as a national conversation. People look at America and they follow America. So if we set this as a national conversation and a national tone from the bottom to the top, and then from the top down, then I think we will begin to ignite things across the world that will make other governments look at the way they do things different. But starting with our own country, this needs to be a national conversation. So with the organizations that exist, not just yours, not just mine, but other organizations throughout the United States that have sprouted up and are looking to champion this cause, we all need to link up, lock arms, and begin to work together as a group. We don't have to merge as one group, but we work together as a group. Our partners in Florida, our partners in other areas of the states, as you mentioned, Georgia, Ohio, and in New Jersey and in New York, and so on and so forth. Everywhere where there is an organization of color fighting and champion for social equity, we need to be connecting with them. Their contacts and links need to be our contacts and links. And so we need to move this has to be a movement as a whole.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
If you guys, go ahead. Yes, Eric.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, you know, going back to the original question about what is social equity, when we think about the number of presidents who have not only waged this war on drugs, but also put resources towards this war on drugs. When we think about social equity, we have to think about how do we target those areas and those communities that have been impacted, you know, the most with the greatest amount of resources. You know, my understanding of social equity started right here with this book. I don't know if you guys can see that. Jonathan Kozol, Savage Inequalities. This book talked about the inequalities in the education system that we see here in the country, and how in, you know, particular districts, minority or communities of color, communities of poverty, how the amount per pupil that is spent on each student is very different than what we see in suburbs and so on, and how that creates that, you know, inequality. And that's what we saw in the cannabis industry. We saw communities of color targeted and continuing to be targeted for this war. And now we need to see that our greatest resources go right back to those very communities, to rebuild those communities and to give us real opportunities in the industry.
Absolutely. So what I did was I have a slide that's up, and I hope you guys, can you see it, Virgil? Can you see it, Eric? Okay. Yep. So this is the slide that shows a comparison of the 3 equity programs that started out in California, and it started out with Oakland. And Virgil shared a story with me of how even Oakland started making traction with this. And if you don't mind sharing your story, Virgil, about that you shared with me. And I want you to see the evolution of the equity program that we've seen in California thus far. And it's still not hitting exactly on all 4 cylinders, and what we got to do to try to fix it. But I would love for you to share it, Virgil, if you would, please.
So I would say about 3.5 years ago, might even been a little longer than that. But let's just say roughly 3.5 to 4 years ago, there was a conversation that I brought up in front of LA City Council. This is when the media was focusing on LA real tough. And I stood up and had the conversation when I reached the microphone about there being 187 what we call pre-ICOs in the city of Los Angeles operating, dispensaries operating in LA. And out of those 187, there were only 3 Black owners and 2 Latino owners that owned in the city of Los Angeles. And we felt that moving forward, as this conversation moves forward in LA about creating Measure M, and this was predating Prop 64, predating Measure M. But before any of this stuff passed, we needed to address the disparity beforehand, and that social equity or this conversation cannot be an afterthought. This conversation has to be a part of legalizing cannabis in California. And that's where the conversation started. It really got Oakland turning their wheels. And then with all of that media attention, I would say about a week later, after it hit the wire, Al Sharpton, I think it was about maybe a couple of weeks later, Al Sharpton came out and made a statement in support of that. And then maybe about 4 weeks to a month later, Cory Booker came out and made a public statement in support of that. So that conversation that happened in LA in one city council meeting began to spark something in the minds of our representative of color to say, you got a point there. We do not need to have that many locations or this movement going further without first addressing those that have been impacted in a negative way that now will not be able to participate in a multi-billion-dollar industry.
You still there, Virgil?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, all right. I thought we had lost you. So yes, so that was the establishment of it, and then so the iteration of all of that conversation started out with Oakland, right? Correct?
Yes. Yes.
And so I know personally, I have worked with, and the organization has worked with equity applicants out in Oakland, and there's been multiple challenges, multiple issues that have been going on. And as you can see in the screen here, it goes from an Oakland model to a Los Angeles model to a San Francisco model. And the models have a little bit in common, but they're still maybe not hitting on all 4 cylinders. And if you can maybe discuss some of the challenges that you've seen, maybe specific to LA or Oakland, and I'll talk about Oakland from my perspective of what I've been hearing and seeing and working with on the ground, and we'll go from there.
In LA, I would say there hasn't really been any challenges. I mean, if you really want to say challenges, except for LA being such a large city, and it takes such a long time for things to really get an opportunity to move. You have to understand, we have one of the largest cities in the country as far as population wise. And you have to also take in mind that LA is the 5th largest financial state or city in the world. With that being said, I just wanted to preference that magnitude of what you're dealing with. So things in LA are not going to move super fast like we want them to, or we would hope they would. So the slow movement has been maybe an issue for LA, but we got to understand the monster that we're operating with. In reference to social equity, I would say that funding for those people who are looking to get into the industry has become a barrier for entry. Secondly, the application process within the state of California. And I'll tell you why. In California, and understand that I'm the first one ever in the history to submit a state application with a felony. So I'm like the guinea pig of what we'll have challenges with. So now I have to go get a live scan, fingerprinting, and it brings up my record. So the state asked me to address a 15-year-old misdemeanor. So these are to me some of the challenges that I think that will come into play with a social equity applicant, of having to address things that I feel are unnecessary. Now, if a nonviolent cannabis felony is no longer a factor, then why do I even have to address it in my application process?
Right.
Why am I explaining what my felony is, how I have been rehabilitated from it, and then writing that I'm sorry that I got it. So now I have to apologize to the racist system that has incarcerated me unjustly for incarcerating me. So this is, to me, once again, another negative impact on people of color that want to apply for an application on a state level. So these are some of the barriers that I always look at. How can we take off the table, get rid of? So that means going to BCC, talking to the people that can make the decisions. And if you have a felony in this past, 5 or 10 years, then that shouldn't even be a conversation. That should automatically be exempt, or a conversation, or I shouldn't even have to mention it in my application process.
Right. So what do you say if you look at all three models here, and please, all those folks that are listening in to us, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, if you can, if you're on the platform, if you have questions, please ask your questions and get ready for that. But what do you say when you look at all three programs? All three equity programs are focused on a California cannabis conviction. So, but what do you say to the business owner who is African American, no conviction, may have lived in one of the, it hasn't lived in one of the targeted zones or what have you, but definitely has social and economical disadvantages versus some of our other counterparts? What do you say for them when they go, I don't qualify for this, to get into this program, but I want to, and so now so basically they're being disqualified because they don't have that type of charge or felony on their record. What do you say to those folks? So this is one thing I was very clear at in the very beginning and understood. Everybody's not going to qualify for social equity. Well, I don't care what color you are or where you come from. Everybody's not going to qualify. When I say qualify, the biggest issue that I have people approaching me and say, well, we don't have any money to get into this program, or it costs this and it costs that. And I have to address them and say that then maybe this is not the business for you. Because I don't care if you're selling socks or t-shirts or bubble gum or candy, you're going to need capital to purchase that product to be able to sell it. You're going to have some form of startup capital. So when I made that comment in the very beginning that this is not a welfare program, the city of Los Angeles is not going to give you a license and then give you money to operate your business too. It's just not happen. Social equity. So let me be clear. Social equity would take a person like myself who has received a cannabis felony for operating in the cannabis industry, or someone who has sold cannabis on the street and received a felony for that. Now we'll have that felony be exempt from them keeping them out of the industry, because prior to Prop 64 and Measure M in California, if you had a felony, a cannabis felony, you could not even dump the trash in a dispensary. You would not even be allowed to work or own and operate. Social equity gives you now that opportunity to be employed or be an owner and operator. But you have to have money to run your business. Right. Right.
Let me ask you this, Virgil, in regards to, out in California, you guys, or for the most part, a more liberal leaning state, as is states like New Jersey and a couple others, Colorado and so on. What is the message to elected officials in the more conservative states who are much more likely to put in place laws that prohibit folks who have felonies, from cannabis to participate in the industry? What is the message to those folks to get them to understand, why it's important to have an equity program?
First of all, if you are representing, and I don't care who you are and what color you are or what party line you are involved in, if you are representing a community of color, then you need to represent them properly. And so we need to understand that not only as citizens that will be voting for those people that represent us, but the people that represent us, we need to enforce that if you're going to represent my community, that you represent it in the fashion that we have put you in office to represent us. So if someone is excluding the community that they represent, are they really representing us? That would be my question that I would ask. So if we have cannabis felonies, and we just use my city, in the city of Compton, if our representative in the city of Compton has created laws that keep us out of the cannabis industry, then that's a representative we need to get up out of that seat and put somebody in that represents us. And so I would empower everybody to utilize the political process municipally, as well as on a state level as well, and as well as on even a higher level of government than that, to make sure that the people that are in place represent us. They need to make sure that the laws that are created are different from what the laws have been created before that only represent the white minority. And I have to say minority because they are not the majority, but the white minority within this country. It has to represent all of this country. And so to representatives that represent us need to understand that cannabis felonies should be exempt in the application process in every state.
Awesome. Hey, so question for you, Virgil. Do you mentor other people that are wanting to get in the industry from a cultivation or dispensary or processing standpoint, or have you? And is that something as you in your capacity, I know you do a lot, is something of interest for you in helping individuals who are, and I don't care if they're equity or not, be able to figure out how to navigate through this? I think we lost Virgil. So long story short, I was asking Virgil if he mentors. I want to go back to,
Is there still an echo when I speak? Yeah, I can hear it on my end.
Do you have headsets in?
No, I don't.
Okay. Yeah.
Is it still there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great. So I want to make sure we address something. So the Oakland, Los Angeles, San Francisco model, you see that there's some differences there. I will say that all of them have been having challenges in regards to it. And the takeaway from what Virgil was speaking of is that basically you can't be, this is not a social welfare program, it's an opportunity program to get you in. However, not every business owner and not everyone who qualifies is going to be adept to getting in and being successful. And so there's been some things that we've identified that we think the state of California can do better, as well as these other states who are coming on board and looking at social equity programs. These are some of the things that we want to challenge them to focus on. And it starts with here. Licensing preparation. To prepare for your license is so critical. To understand what components that you need for the license, such as you need an odor mitigation plan and things of that nature, and you need a security plan. Eric, can you just give them a little bit, and Virgil, welcome back. Virgil, we're talking about the fact that, recapping the fact that you said that social equity is not welfare. It is an opportunity. And so here's some of the challenges that I've heard from Oakland and from Los Angeles and from other different areas in regards to these individuals. We need this program to be successful, and we need to show success. And my question for you was, do you mentor folks at all, Virgil? Have you mentored? Because you have a dispensary. And if there's people that want mentorship or guidance or what have you done that before? Or is that something that's in your wheelhouse to do? I know how busy you are.
Yes, I'm actually doing that now. I have a 19,000 square foot facility and a 25,000 square foot facility right next door to my 19,000 square foot. I also have a 210,000 square foot facility that I am allowing growers and manufacturers to be a part of that will come up under our roof, and they can get licensed within this 210,000 square feet. So I make myself available for that. I also am teaching courses and classes and training staff members to be able to be good bud tenders, managers, manufacturers, cultivators. So any area of the industry that a person needs training in, I can provide that and am providing that right now. I have one gentleman who I'm mentoring them to become a dispensary owner. So in this third phase, it will be social equity dispensaries, and he's going to be applying, and I will be mentoring him and financing his, helping him with finances at his location. So yes, I do do that. And I do want to be very clear. Some of the challenges that I've had people approach me on is like I say, finances. And they approach me and say, I don't have any money, or I need money. Can we get access to capital? And I have to say that when you go into business, you have to have a lot of that already planned out. You don't go to open up a business without already having your capital ready to go, because then you're going to have to get a lease. And then people are, have to be real. I had a guy approach me and say, well, I have $10,000. I want to get into the industry. Well, my lease costs me $32,000 a month. So you have to be realistic. Even that $10,000 wouldn't get him a lease in LA. I mean, it may get him a lease, but shoot, what is he going to do the following month? What is he going to do for product, employees, and this, that, and the other? So we have to be realistic about what social equity represents and what it can and will do for people of color. Let me just preface this one thing. And this is just something I've said. I wish that it was cats that, we all know those cats that used to hustle. If they understood the true opportunity that they had to get in this business, those are people that don't need access to capital. They have capital because they've been hustling all their life, and they understand. So when I created or had that mindset of social equity, I was talking about that person that used to hustle weed in the streets that received a felony crime, just like that white guy that used to hustle weed in the streets that didn't receive that felony crime, who's able to participate in the cannabis industry now. I wanted to make sure those people were able to be involved in the cannabis industry because they were on the same playing grounds and in the same fields that white guy street hustled in. But the black guy was the one that went to jail or received the felony. Those are the ones that I wanted to see get involved in the industry because I understand that they already have access to capital.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
And I think for those groups who come to the table, I think Virgil is spot on when he says that first and foremost, we have to have realistic expectations about what we can do in this space. If you don't have capital, if you don't have a business plan, you need to start there. Don't come to the table saying you want to be a dispensary, but you have no background and no one on your team with any type of retail experience. You don't have a plan for how you are going to actually operate and sell what it is that you say you're going to sell. So I definitely encourage people who are looking to get into the space. There are folks who are interested in maybe investing in your business and so on, but no one's going to invest in your business by you just coming to them saying, hey, I don't have access to capital. Can you help me? You have to lay out a true business plan. You have to demonstrate the members on the team and their competence and ability to deliver on that plan, and how ultimately is it going to make the investor money. That's why people invest. They don't invest because it's a good idea or they think you deserve a shot. They invest because they want to make money. And so if you are able to put a proposition to them on how they can make money, then you're headed in the right direction. But not having capital just lets you know that you have to work much harder on the ground floor and getting yourself prepared to even ask people for capital.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we can talk about is this is where there's been folks up in the Oakland area where they get they're equity applicants, they get a permit. And the part of the equity program is that you have general applicants who are incubating you. And so talking about the verbiage between an incubator program, accelerator program, what does that mean? What's technical assistance? And if we can talk about the difference, and even license preparation, how important it is to prepare your license, and you don't have to know everything, but you got to find some folks that do know stuff that can come on board with you and support you, because this is the most highly regulated industry throughout the country right now. And so I don't know, Virgil or Eric, if you want to talk about some of the differences between being incubated from a social equity. Virgil, you can talk about that for sure. But what an accelerator program is, what's technical assistance, how to prepare for your license, things of that nature.
I'll just talk briefly on that. And I like what you said, Eric. You brought up a very, very important and valid point. People are not going to invest in you if you don't know what you're doing. You have to. That's like me going to apply for a job as an electrical engineer and I don't know anything about electricity. No one's going to hire me. And right. So no one's going to invest in you if you don't know what you're doing. And if, like Eric said, if you don't have a business plan or a model, then I'm not going to take $500,000 to $1 million and throw it towards someone that really doesn't have a true plan or have any knowledge or education within the field or the industry that they're going to be operating in. So, yeah, that's a very valid point that you brought up. Going back to the incubator program, you have to understand that, first of all, you have to have a whole host of things. And Raj, you can really attest to this. When filling out your application, there are many things that you're going to need. You're going to need your site plan, your security plan. You're going to need where your safe is, and you're going to need a whole layout of your business. And you're going to need that business plan that Eric talked about. This is a part of your application process. And understand that all of this technical stuff, technical assistance that Roz talked about, I want to be clear to you guys that it has a $ attached to it.
Yes.
And so this is not going to be something that you can pull out of the sky. You can get off of the web. You can download, or you can patch and click and paste. This is not that.
It's a skill set. It's a skill set.
Exactly. So you're going to have to either bring someone on board that can do all of that, prepare your application, and get you ready to go. It's going to cost. So we need to know that. But as far as all of the technical assistance stuff, operational procedures, things like that, that comes in your what is that? Your SOPs. Your SOPs are your standard operating procedures, and that explains to whatever entity that you're directing your attention to. They're going to want to know that you know what you're doing when manufacturing, because you're dealing with either volatile or non-volatile extractions. No one's going to give you a license and you don't have a clue on how to deal with volatile or non-volatile extractions. It's not going to happen. So these are some of the things that we definitely have to know. So technical assistance is very important. Incubator, to me, would probably be more of a better suit for those who lack the knowledge. Why? Because they'll always have someone who is an expert in the industry operating almost side by side, or maybe in the next room over, or maybe in the next building over, that you can reach out to, and they could probably provide you with some mentorship. Just like in my 210,000 square feet facility, and we'll have many different cultivators and manufacturers and edible makers, and they can always reach us just maybe a few yards away, 50 feet away, and say, hey, you know, what do you think about this? How does this look? So I would say the incubator program is probably more conducive to those that don't know or are not familiar, and that will handle the accelerated process.
Got it. And so, and the thing that is happening, guys, you guys have to know that there's now 32 medical programs throughout the country, and there's 20. No, I'm sorry. Is it? No, it's 32 medical, and then I think it was 10 adult use programs throughout the country. And so Virgil is in California and has the ability to be able to pull people, and he's in the largest city in California and one of the top most economically, you know, in regards to the size, economically thriving city, which is Los Angeles County. So he has the ability, and there's folks there to be able to give them that mentorship and give them that support. What we're trying to figure out is, how do we do this, and how do we take this whole scenario on the road? What do we do to create mentors in states like Missouri, in states like New Jersey, in states like Florida, in states that don't have a program thus far? Those are the type of conversation, and that goes back to what Virgil said about all of these other groups that we are all looking to do the same thing. We got to kind of come together. We don't have to work under the same umbrella, but how do we give support so that we have the opportunity? So if you're in California and you want to get into the industry, or if you're willing to, Virgil, if there's someone that's willing to fly and spend time with you, are you open to that? Do you have people that come in and maybe spend a day with you, or do some shadowing or anything like that?
Yes, but my suggestion, Roz, is that groups like mine and groups like yours, I would say that we sit down for a day. We start planning this so-called social equity tour that would go from state to state, and make people aware of that, and that they would come to these programs, that instead of them flying to California, we would go on the road and come to them in their states and have this state to state social equity tour. Of course, we would be requiring people to pay a small fee to get in, but the information that we're going to give them is worth millions for a little or nothing. Yes, to answer your question, I would receive someone coming into the state of California, but I think our reach and going to them in their state, because there's not just one person that may want to hop on that plane and come here. There may be 1,000 people that may want to hop on that plane and come here. So how do we take people like myself, people like yourself, people like Eric to your state, to their state, to this person's state, and be able to provide them with this information in a program? I believe that would achieve a better level of success to what we are trying to achieve in our end game of educating our people about social equity, how to get involved in the industry. And like you said, Roz, make partnerships with people in that state that we stay in communication with, and we do things with them and educate a point person to be able to educate the masses. And that's how we get that done. Also, we have technology. just as you and I are now able to jump on this computer and be able to get this message out to a group of people, we need to be doing, I would say, monthly seminars and monthly programs that people would sign on to and get this information. And so I believe these are the most effective ways using the internet, and then going state to state, basically on a social equity tour. I think that would be the most effective way that we would reach the country.
Yes, yes. And so the slide I have out next is, because not everyone, going back to what Virgil said, not everyone's going to touch plant and be an edible maker, concentrates, process, cultivate, or have a dispensary. And one thing that, if you guys were listening, the one thing Virgil said is you got to do something that you know and that you're passionate about and that you have some expertise in. He can't go and be an electrical engineer and have no clue about electrical engineering. So that's where the diversity planning requirement has come in, where we've worked in Florida and Pennsylvania. It has some language. Ohio has some. We're looking at some in New Jersey as well, because they there is some overlapping, but there's some separation between having a social equity program and a diversity program. And E, I'll let you maybe share a little bit from your perspective. How do we run those both parallel so that we can get both, and it's not either or in like a state of Florida? Because we're at a point here in Florida that we're going to introduce some social equity language here in Florida for this new session coming up. But E, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, when you go ahead.
Before you get started, for those, because we'll be airing this, Raj, you said you're running this back in California, so I can, get people in California. For those who don't understand what a diversity program is versus social equity, can you explain the difference between the two, so that way they're able to follow you when you explain that or talk about it?
E, please do honors. Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we did here in Florida is we actually started with diversity. We met with our legislators, and here in Florida, we have a very different program, a medical marijuana program, than what was created out in California, where you have the horizontal model. We have here in the state of Florida a vertical model, meaning from seed to sale is all under one organization, which creates and then when you limit the number of licenses that are awarded, then you thus limit the number of people who can actually participate in the industry. And so that's exactly what they did here in Florida. They created a vertical model, and they only awarded 5 licenses in the first round. And to date, we have now 14 licenses, but only the first 5 were awarded through an actual application process. So that means you have 14 organizations that can do seed to sale and everything under one roof. And if you don't have one of those licenses, you essentially can't participate in the cultivation, you can't participate in the processing and manufacturing, and you can't participate in the dispensing, because those 3 components by law are required to be under one organization. So when we met with our elected officials, we talked about how do we create spaces for minorities and people of color, veterans, women, people who do, small businesses, really. How do we create a space for them to participate in a market like Florida's, where it's vertically integrated, and those 3 main components by law have to be a part of, the simple organization? So we talked to them about requiring each of the license holders to submit a diversity plan and talk about and map out how they are going to make diversity a real priority in their organization, from equity and staffing and C-suite positions, as well as in contracting. And that is what allows us to be able to then create opportunities. So that individual who says, you know what, I am, I have no interest in actually working in the industry, but I want to invest, and they may be an accredited investor or something like that, then we can get them paired up with one of these organizations and perhaps invest in there. We've also talked to some of these license holders about creating equity, small capital equity raises, so that people who don't have 250,000, but maybe have 25,000 or 50,000, so that they are able to invest in the industry as well. We work with all of them to help them to identify C-suite level professionals on down to their delivery drivers and their dispensary staff. So we want to make sure we create those opportunities as well. And then from contracting standpoint, from day one, we've been talking a lot about the ancillary services and businesses that surround this industry. And many, we have a lot of African Americans and Hispanic, owned businesses that are out there, women-owned businesses. And those businesses can most likely be able to serve this industry if they just turn their attention to the industry. They create a marketing plan for doing so, but they already have, the capital to do business. They already have a business and, that is already working and so on. And that is what we envisioned when we created the diversity plan, is how do we get these other people who aren't going to come out and be a grower, who aren't going to come out and open up a dispensary? How do we create space for them in this industry as well?
So some of the opportunities that have come from this, for example, we have someone that owns, they're a recruiter, they're a headhunter. And so they're African-American owned headhunter agency, recruiting agency. They've been able to get contracts with these large size vertical integrated businesses, not only in Florida, but I tell you, there's other markets. Louisiana only has two cultivators and manufacturers. Is the LSU and Southern University. So just imagine if you're in Louisiana and you want to get into the industry and you don't want to, they're doing dispensary license, but they're going real slow. And you see that the industry is starting to come up. Well, how do you go and take, maybe you have edibles, or maybe you have an idea for manufacturing a product, a skincare line or something of that nature. That's where you go and pitch yourself. If there's an area that you are an expert in and you want to transfer it over into cannabis, that was our thought, that, okay, if we make this a requirement to get your license renewed or to get your license where you have to have this, we felt like then we would give, those other marginalized businesses a chance to get into the industry. And so we have to go back in 2019 and put some more teeth to the language that we submitted. We're seeing other states pick it up. But I do think that, and Virgil, this question is for you. Do you think social equity and diversity can they run parallel? Can they coexist under a law and be there in the industry, overall, for both of them running together?
I believe that they can work hand in hand to kind of answer that question.
Yes.
The biggest thing that I would like to see, because they actually run together, but they're two separate situations. Right. One is targeting a specific group, and then the other one, diversity plan, kind of blankets everybody who wants to get involved. And so I see the differences there, but I think both of them are important to be implemented. How do we bring those together where social equity and diversity is kind of meshed into one thing, and all of the requirements and representations are all represented into one, is what I would be interested to sit down and discuss further and see how we can move that so it can be a social equity / diversity program. Be interesting to see that.
Absolutely. I think it would be very interesting to have a conversation about that and see where it can fit in. I think they coexist. I think they should be able to coexist. I'm someone that I don't have a desire to touch plant, but I have a service that could benefit. And if I have someone, it reminds you of the DBE programs, or the minority business enterprise programs that the federal government puts in place for set aside contracting. Just think about the general contractors and the folks that are out here that have a service. And if we have something in place that, some of these cannabis organizations, they're making millions of dollars and they're farming out contracts and fee for service for things that need to get done. And that we want to just make sure that open opportunity is open for everyone and not just closed for a limited amount of people. And that business model is truly important, not only in the mainstream for a chamber of commerce perspective, but for this cannabis industry, a thriving business model is important. I think it's something that we need to offer to our communities.
what it
Yeah.
sounds like is a support system for social equity and for the
Right.
program as a whole, an ancillary part of the industry that a lot of people aren't looking to tap into. Like you said, you don't want to touch the plant. There are a lot of companies that don't touch the plant, but make millions of dollars off of the cannabis industry. Are
Right.
we involved in those components? Are we looking to that? Or are we just stuck looking at, oh, I want to dispense because that's the
Sexy part.
exactly. Or cultivation because that's what we've heard, or manufacturing. But we forgot about how I just spent $100,000 on packaging over the past month with some company. And that is necessary packaging that I will be spending next month, the same 100,000 in the next month. And how many other companies like myself spend that type of money on packaging? So if you owned a packaging company for the cannabis industry alone, look what kind of money you would just make. And you don't even have to worry about whether the product sells or not, because you're going to sell that packaging that people need to put the products in, in many different forms, tech companies and so on and so forth. So yes, I see how the diversity program will be very, very supportive and effective if implemented along with the social.
Exactly.
I see the social equity piece as making sure that those communities and folks who have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs have a seat at the table and have real opportunities to be owners in the space. And I see the diversity program as making sure that the industry at large is starting in a way that is diverse. I keep saying to people that we have a real opportunity in the cannabis industry to be different than all other industries, to not put in some of those glass ceilings that are there for, people of color and women and those kind of folks. And that's how we'll create a very diverse industry, moving forward, is by requiring folks to hire, a product manufacturing company or a co-packing facility, or these are the things that, businesses need. And we have minorities who are already operating these type of businesses for other industries. Now we just need to educate them and create space and opportunities for them in this industry as well.
I agree.
But before I go into a couple of questions that we have, we got about 5 more minutes. Virgil, you're out there in the land of La La Land. I lived in LA for 14 years. So it is star-studded. You are liable to walk down the sidewalk and see, entertainers, athletes, or what have you. How do we get some of our folks that are definitely consumers of the plant, who are definitely out there, that have a star power, that have a social influence, but to get them, instead of pairing up with, some of the large companies, to look at, organizations like our organization, to get on these webinars, if they're talking about, that they're in the industry, sometimes we need them to reach out to our community and our people that are trying to figure out how to get in and make some connectivity. Any thoughts on that? I know that you really have a lot of connectivity on that side of the world, and I want to get your thoughts about it.
I'll just keep it real.
Go ahead.
Most of these cats are dealing with these companies because these companies are offering them money, bottom line. And so they have elevated themselves because of their star power. So their star power is their brand. Gotcha. And so a lot of them are not entertaining common folk. They are entertaining those big companies because those big companies are reaching out to them and throwing money their way. So it makes it very difficult for me to get the ear of somebody who's a superstar when, say, a company over here is throwing them $20,000 just to come sit at the table, or a $50,000 check just to come sit at the table. You have people that have reached out to Snoop and gave Snoop just this rich guy just gives Snoop $100,000 and jet to fly here just to sit down and consider something. So when you have to compete against stuff like that, it makes that star power situation difficult. What I am doing is reaching out to the stars that I do know and trying to get them to understand that one, you came from a common folk situation before you became a superstar. So don't forget where you came from.
Real
And
talk.
second of all, you need to reach back to your community that you came from that ain't made it like you made it and give them some insight on how to make it and be able to just do that from the kindness of your heart and not look for a paycheck to go with it. So I would say that organizations like the organizations that we have in minorities for marijuana and CMA, I think that we need to start looking at the connections that we have, reaching out to them, giving them a written platform of what we have on why we would like them to come and speak to these group of people for this reason. And I think if they see the benefit in that, or even just the benefit for others, like this is some charity stuff that they need to be doing in this industry. And we need to encourage that. How far we could get with that, I don't know, but I would be willing to take a stab at it. I have a lot of relationships being here in California, and I've done a lot for those people before they got where they are and still to this day.
Right.
So, when it's time to call, then I'm expect them to step up to the plate.
Exactly.
So I'm open for that. I'm, however you guys want to put that plan together, let's put something together, get a few, superstars to come and sit on a panel and speak and educate and make themselves available.
Right.
But I think that creating something in this industry, your brand, I say just be an expert of your craft. So like when I'm a cultivator as well, when I cultivate my herb, I don't go run out and get Snoop to say that this is the best herb, although that is a good route to go. No, what I do is my herb is out there and people are talking about it and loving it. And actually I was prior to this, I was sitting down packaging up an order today. And so I'm finding myself not able to keep up with a lot of the orders that I'm receiving because the quality of the product is excellent. And so the end consumer is who I'm reaching. And so I do it a different way. Once my brand has like expanded out there, now I'm going to go out and go get a Snoop or whoever to say that this brand is good, to take it to the highest level possible. But I recommend grind it first, stay within your craft, perfect your skill so that when you do present it, there's nothing denying you.
Man, I tell you what, we got some. This has been, an hour has flown by. I'm telling you, I think there's a part 2 here because we haven't talked about the social justice part of it and where that plays in and that's totally important to discuss. Yes. From an expungement situation to I had a conversation. I spoke at Southern University 2 weeks ago, and I spoke to their law school students, and we talked about reparations. And we really need to have a conversation from a social justice aspect. What does that mean? And in California just passed a bill, and I'm excited to say that M for MM is going to have a technology platform because in California, there's an automatic expungement clearing, a bill that just passed about 3 to 4 weeks, almost a month ago, what have you. So basically, if you meet certain criteria and certain offenses will be automatically expunged, but you have to submit. You have to basically say, I want you to expunge. It won't go. It's not an automatic, but you have to kind of submit the paperwork or say, hey, please look at my record, see if I qualify. And so M for MM, I'm happy to say that we have a technology platform, a web-based platform that people, all they got to do is just go in there. It's launching next week. They just type their name in, their address, date of birth, and it automatically goes to a law firm that will check and see if they qualify, get them in the system, and that's it. They wait for their paperwork back to say that their record was expunged for whatever that if it was a possession or if it was a a misdemeanor or what have you. There's certain levels that are going to be expunged by the state of California, and we want to share that and just talk more about the social justice end of this situation.
That's
Absolutely.
beautiful.
So
I think. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I was going to give you guys the last word. There was 2 questions that came up. There was one about buying CBD over the counter in New Jersey. Can you do that? You can buy CBD. And then there was a question about, can I invest in stocks in Canada? And yes, if you have done your research and you see there's some Canadian stocks that you want to invest in, just because you are a U.S. citizen doesn't mean that you can't buy off the Canadian stock exchange. And so we actually have a gentleman that I met at one of the conferences that wants to come on and talk about buying off the Canadian stock exchange. So we'll set that up. I want to give Virgil and Eric the last word here. Let you guys know that I'll be in Vegas next week for the MJ Biz conference. It's the largest conference in the country. This is my first time going. So expect for me to share a lot of information, and we're going to go firsthand and see what they're delivering, how they're delivering it, see how many from our community are able to participate, and how do we, share this information. So Virgil, thank you so much, brother, for coming on board with me today. We'll have to do a part 2 next Friday. E, last words.
I just want to see more and more people get on these calls, on these talks. We are inviting. Virgil is no small matter to have on this call, and I want people to understand that we're bringing the who's who of the industry to you. We're bringing it to you for your benefit, and so I just ask everybody who's on today, next week, bring somebody else. When you get off, share this with your network, and then next week, make sure you bring 1 to 2 other people to listen in as well. This is a conversation that we know is happening in our communities, and we know that there's a steep learning curve to actually being able to, make an into this industry. And so we want to help decrease that learning curve for you guys. So please join us every week and bring other folks along with you as well.
Virgil, last words, Virgil.
Thank you, first of all, for MM4M for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yes, we definitely need another part 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, because this is a conversation that's not going away. And there is so much evolving every day, every month, every year within this industry. And this is a very beautiful platform to receive solid information, not misinformation, and that's what this industry has been kicking out for so many years, but solid information. I would just say to people out there that are listening, reach out to the groups that are in the know, and reach out to the people that are actually on the ground floor making this happen, and educate yourself. If this is something you're interested in, whether you're educated about the industry or not, but you want to get in, reach out to the people that know. Email them, text them, however, Facebook them, however you have to get to them. Research them, Google them. But there's so much technology out there where you can reach any of these group of people. But make sure they're the right group. Vet them first, and then make sure that they're the best fit for you.
Hey Virgil, what's your spot on? What's your dispensary out in California? We want to make sure we tag it and make sure people know how to reach you.
Crenshaw Holistic Caregivers, which is located on 7415 Crenshaw Boulevard. Western Caregivers, which is 654 North Manhattan Place, just off of Melrose, in Los Angeles. And then the 1601 South Soto Street in the city of Los Angeles. And that's are the 3 locations. They are minority owned and ran. And we're here. If you need to reach out website wise, it is VG@CaliforniaCannabisWC.com, or at vg@californiaminorityaLliance.com.
Got it. Virgil, my brother, you know, I appreciate you. I'll see you in Vegas.
Yes, I will be there.
We will be doing a part 2. Thank you just for your energy and for your passion and for just doing what you do. I thank you, brother, and we will continue this dialogue. Thank you guys so much.
Okay.
You're on with Roz.
Okay,
with CannaTalk.
Eric, good seeing you, brother.
Good seeing you as well, brother.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Absolutely. You're on live with CannaTalk with Roz. It's Friday, November 9th. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to all the attendees. I see your comments. Just your appreciation is what drives us. So just know that we're going to keep bringing you this great information, and make sure you tell a friend and tune in next Friday. Until then, take care and have a great weekend.
All right.
All right.